Okay, so you just paid $6 at a drive-through window and somebody handed you a warm paper box. $6, give or take a quarter, depending on your state and your luck. The American average for a Big Mac sits right around there in 2026. Inside the box, 2 beef patties weighing about 3 ounces combined, 3 pieces of bun, a slice of cheese, some lettuce, onion, pickles, and a squirt of a sauce whose recipe is one of the least secrets in food. You will eat it in 6 minutes. Roughly 550 calories, no cutlery, no ceremony. And the math feels self-explanatory, doesn't it? It's a hamburger. You paid for beef. Beef's been expensive lately, everyone knows that. Plus the bun and the toppings, the teenager at the window, the lights, the fryer, and a little profit for the man who owns the place. A restaurant sold you food, and the $6 is what the food plus the labor costs, marked up the way restaurants mark things up. That's the story the receipt tells. A food transaction, start to finish. Here's what's odd, though. The company whose name is on the box, the Golden Arches, the third most recognized logo on earth, didn't cook your burger, didn't buy the beef, didn't hire the teenager. In about 95% of American locations, McDonald's Corporation doesn't run the restaurant at all. And yet, of everyone who touched your $6, the company that didn't make your lunch walked away with the fattest, safest margin in the building. To see how, you have to stop looking at the burger and look at the dirt under it. Here's the problem with the food transaction story. McDonald's is not primarily in the burger business. By the logic of its own numbers, where the money comes from, where the profit concentrates, what the company actually owns, McDonald's is one of the largest restaurant landlords on the planet. The burger is real, the fries are real, but the machine above them is a real estate operation wearing a chef's hat. A man who helped build the company said it out loud 70 years ago in a sentence we'll get to, and the sentence is still true. It's just printed nowhere on the menu. So this video is about your $6 and the 2 different businesses it passes through on its way up. By the end, you'll know what the burger actually costs to make. The beef is less of it than you think. You'll know the anatomy of the franchisee's dollar, the man who did cook your lunch, what he keeps, and the 3 separate tolls he sends upstream off the top of every sale, profitable or not. You'll know the 1956 decision that turned a milkshake machine salesman's struggling burger chain into a property empire, a scheme cooked up by a finance guy who reportedly didn't even like hamburgers. And you'll know why the same sandwich costs $8 in Zurich and $3 in Cairo, and what a magazine has been doing with that fact since 1986. The usual promise applies. No villains required. Everyone in this story follows their incentives. The franchisee, the corporation, the teenager, you. The incentives just stack into a shape where the smallest risk collects the surest money. Start where the receipt says to start, with the food. What does a Big Mac cost to make? Fast food operators live and die by a number called food cost, the ingredients as a share of the menu price, and the industry's rule of thumb runs right around 30%. On a $6 Big Mac, that's about $1.80 of actual food. Break it open. The beef, the thing the whole product is named for, the thing you'd guess is the expense, is 2 small patties, about 1/5 of a pound combined. Even with beef prices at record American highs in 2026, that's somewhere around 70 or 80 cents of wholesale hamburger. Call it 12–13% of what you paid. The bun, the cheese slice, the lettuce, onion, pickles, and the famous sauce, produced at industrial scale, delivered on contracts a national chain negotiates ruthlessly, fill out the rest of the $1.80. So the entire edible object is under $2. The other $4 and change bought no food at all. Where does it go? Labor is the biggest honest slice. Crew wages and payroll run in the high 20s as a percent of sales at a typical location. Call it $1.60 of your $6. Then utilities, insurance, paper, uniforms, the fryer oil, the maintenance guy. All real, all necessary, all roughly the costs you'd guess. And then there's a category the industry politely calls occupancy and fees, the money that leaves the restaurant before anyone counts profit. That's the slice we're here for. Because at a McDonald's, the rent is not like other rent. The landlord and the brand are the same entity, and the lease is unlike anything else in retail. First, meet the person who actually sold you lunch. About 95 out of every 100 US McDonald's are owned by franchisees. independent operators who bought the right to run a restaurant under the arches. The franchisee paid for the kitchen equipment, the signage, the inventory. The franchisee hires the crew, eats the labor costs, absorbs the beef price spikes, and handles every rush, complaint, and health inspection. When something goes wrong at a McDonald's, it's the franchisee's problem. That's the design. In exchange, the franchisee gets the most valuable brand in food and a system that has spent 70 years learning how to sell hamburgers and agrees to send 3 streams of money upstream, off the top of gross sales before calculating whether the month made any profit. Stream 1, the service fee, better known as a royalty, around 4% of every sale, the price of the name on the sign. Stream 2, advertising, roughly another 4%, pooled into the marketing machine that made the name worth 4%. Stream 3, the big one, rent, not rent to some third-party mall owner. Rent to McDonald's Corporation itself, which owns or controls the land and building under most of its restaurants, and charges its franchisees a percentage of sales for the privilege of standing on it, typically running to 10% and beyond, well above what the dirt would fetch on the open market. Add the tolls. Something like 18 cents of every sales dollar leaves for corporate before the franchisee counts a dime. After food, labor, and everything else, a well-run location keeps mid-single digits. The house didn't cook anything. The house owns the house. Slow down on that rent because it's the engine of the entire company. When a McDonald's location gets developed, corporate, or its real estate arm, typically controls the site, buys the land, builds or secures the building, then leases it to the franchisee on a 20-year term. The franchisee's lease isn't a flat number. It's a percentage of sales with a floor. Sell more burgers, pay more rent. The landlord holds an equity-like claim on every register in the building without frying a single potato. Run a sample month at a busy location doing $300,000 in sales. Roughly 12,000 leaves as royalty, 12 more into the national ad pool, 30 plus as rent. Call it $55,000 upstream, off the top, before beef, buns, wages, or the electric bill get paid. The corporation's month at that store was booked the moment the sales rang. Everything after that is the franchisee's problem. Now look at what that does to the two businesses under one roof. The franchisee runs the hard business. Perishable inventory, hourly staff, 3% of sales here, a broken ice cream machine there, margins that live and die on volume. The corporation runs the easy one. It collects rent and royalties calculated on gross sales, revenue that arrives whether the franchisee had a good month or a miserable one. In its own reporting, the margin on the franchise side of the business runs in the mid-80s as a percent. Against the mid-teens corporate earns in the minority of stores, it still runs itself. Read those two numbers again. Same brand, same burger, same parking lot. Running the restaurant, teens. Owning the restaurant's dirt and name, mid-80s. That gap is not an accident of accounting. It was a decision, made in 1956 by a man whose name isn't on anything, at a company that was 6 years from broke. Ray Kroc's origin story is famous. The milkshake mixer salesman who found the McDonald brothers hamburger stand in San Bernardino, franchised it nationwide, and built an empire. The less famous part, the franchising business was a terrible business. Kroc had signed himself into a deal that capped his cut at 1.9% of franchisee sales, and obligated him to hand a quarter of that to the McDonald brothers. By the mid-50s, the company was growing fast and earning almost nothing. Kroc, personally, was borrowing against his life insurance to make payroll. Enter Harry J. Sonneborn, a former clothing company finance man Kroc hired in 1955. Sonneborn looked at the starving burger chain and had the insight the entire modern company is built on. Stop trying to get rich selling franchises. Get rich being the franchisee's landlord. His vehicle, Franchise Realty Corporation, founded 1956, would lease or buy the land under new restaurants, then sublease it to franchisees at a markup. Rent as a percentage of sales, with a guaranteed minimum. The real estate would generate the profit the burgers couldn't. It would also generate control. Miss your rent, deviate from the system, and you don't just lose a franchise agreement. You lose the ground under your kitchen. Sonneborn later said the quiet part to a room of investors. "We are not technically in the food business, we are in the real estate business." Kroc reportedly hated the framing. He loved hamburgers. Sonneborn, by most accounts, could take them or leave them. But Kroc kept the model, because the model was the company. It still is. Fast forward to the present and check the books, because 70 years later, the Sonneborn machine is still visibly running. McDonald's Corporation today holds one of the largest restaurant-linked property portfolios on Earth, tens of billions of dollars of land and buildings across more than 100 countries, most of it under restaurants other people operate. Walk the revenue upstream. Of the money franchisees send corporate every year, roughly 2/3 arrives as rent. The royalty, the fee for the brand itself, is the smaller stream. The landlord out-earns the licensor year after year, which explains a few things about the burger in your hand. It explains why the corporation's earnings barely flinch when beef prices spike. Commodity pain lands on the franchisee's side of the ledger, while rent is calculated on sales, and sales in inflationary years go up. It explains the site selection obsession, the armies of real estate analysts, the corner lot fixation, the drive-through geometry. When you are the landlord, picking the dirt is the whole game. The burgers are how the dirt pays. The scale is hard to overstate. More than 40,000 restaurants worldwide sit on the system's ledger, with a property line on the balance sheet running to tens of billions of dollars before you count the brand. And the tenants have noticed. In 2018, American franchisees, squeezed by rising rents and corporate-mandated remodel bills, did something new in the company's modern history. They organized a National Owners Association, in effect a tenants' union, to bargain with their own landlord. And it explains the system's discipline. Franchisees follow spec, the sauce, the build, the 17-step assembly, not merely because a contract says so, but because the landlord-tenant relationship gives headquarters the ultimate lever over any operator who strays. Your $6, it turns out, funded 2 businesses stacked on one lot, a hamburger stand with honest, thin margins, and above it, silently, one of the best real estate deals of the 20th century. There's one more layer, and it's the one you can taste. Because the corporation's take is a percentage of sales, the system's whole intelligence bends toward one goal: more dollars through more registers, forever. That pressure shaped the product itself. It's why the menu engineering never stops. Bundles, meal deals, the app that knows your order and nudges a 4th item onto it. It's why the Big Mac's price quietly outran inflation for a decade, then became a political talking point when a viral receipt made the run visible. It's why the company leaned into delivery apps, where the same burger rides with a markup approaching $7 once the platforms take their cut, because a high-priced sale still pays rent on the full amount. It's also why the dollar menu died. Cheap items built traffic, but traffic that doesn't grow the ticket doesn't grow the rent. The economics of the landlord lean, always gently, toward the more expensive tray. None of this required anyone to be sinister. The franchisee genuinely hustles. The crew genuinely works. The corporation genuinely built the most efficient food delivery system in history. But when people ask why a Big Mac, the same 2 patties, the same sauce, costs half again what it did a few years ago, the honest answer isn't just beef, wages, and inflation. It's that every layer of the stack above the kitchen is compensated as a percentage of the price, and no layer of the stack is compensated for keeping the price down. The burger has many parents. Cheapness has none. Now, do what a British magazine has done every year since 1986. Fly the burger around the world. The Economist's Big Mac Index prices the identical sandwich in dozens of countries as a cheeky gauge of currencies, because the Big Mac is one of the only products on Earth made to the same spec. From local ingredients, at local wages, on local rents, everywhere at once. It is a $6 economics lab. The 2026 board, America, right around $6. Switzerland, the perennial champion, north of $8. Swiss wages and Swiss rents baked into every bite. Britain and the Eurozone, cheaper than America. And at the bottom, the same burger for the equivalent of $2 to $3 in places like Egypt, Taiwan, and South Africa. Same patties, same 17 steps, a third of the price. What the spread proves is the point of this whole video. The beef barely matters. Cattle trade globally, the raw ingredients of a Big Mac cost roughly similar money everywhere. What varies, what actually sets the price of the sandwich, is everything wrapped around the beef. The wages of the crew, the value of the corner lot, the rent flowing to whoever owns it. A Big Mac is a small edible invoice for the local cost of land and labor, which is why economists take a novelty burger index seriously, and why your $6 version is really a bill for American wages on American real estate, with about 80 cents of beef inside. The burger is the same everywhere. The dirt under it never is. So, where did your $6 actually go? About $1.80 bought food, and only about 80 cents of that was the beef. The rest was bun, cheese, produce, and sauce moving through the most optimized supply chain in the industry. Call it $1.60 for the crew who assembled it in under a minute. Around 18 cents of every dollar, a dollar plus of your $6, left the building immediately as royalty, ad fund, and rent to the corporation that neither cooked nor owned the restaurant, but owns the name and, crucially, the ground. What's left, a few dimes, is the franchisees, the person who took all the operating risk. And the reason the stack looks like that is a 70-year-old decision. A broke burger company discovering that the reliable fortune wasn't in selling hamburgers or even in franchising them. It was in owning the land under everyone who does and pricing the lease as a share of every register ring forever. That's the thing to understand about this box. You didn't just buy a sandwich, you paid a stack of claims. The farmers, the teenagers, the operators, the advertisers, and, above them all, the landlords, the calmest and largest of the lot. History even scored the point for us. Kroc got the fame, the biopics, the face on the wrapper. Sonneborn, the man who actually found the money, clashed with Kroc and walked away in 1967, sold his stock early, and spent decades barely mentioned by the company built on his one idea. The burgers made the legend. The dirt made the fortune. The beef is a commodity. The burger is a franchise. The business, the actual business, is the dirt it's standing on.